What's up guys? Today I'm going to show you how to fully delete a 2023 and up 6.7 Powerstroke. Quick disclaimer, I make these videos for anyone in the world to watch. In a lot of places they don't care if you delete your truck, but in some places it is illegal. So if this is something you're thinking about doing, make sure you first look up your local laws and stay in accordance with them. If this is illegal where you live, I don't recommend you do it. So this is the delete kit here. It comes with an exhaust, an EZ-Link auto agent, and an EGR Delete kit. The kit is from a company called the Diesel Dudes. I'll put a link down in the description if you want to check it out for yourself, and it's the only company I recommend you buy a kit from. I literally get messages daily from guys that want to save a couple bucks, bought a cheaper kit somewhere else, and now they're having nothing but problems with it, and I can't help you. If you have issues with a kit from the Diesel Dudes, I can help you. So the first thing you always want to do when you're deleting your truck is you want to tune it first. And at the time of me making this video, there's only one tune available for these trucks, and I can't see that changing for the foreseeable future, but it makes our job super easy. But the first thing you want to do is pop the hood and put a battery charger on. Just set it somewhere around like 5 to 10 amps. You do not want the batteries going dead while you're flashing the truck. Then grab your auto agent and you want to plug it in to the OBD port under the dash, just like that. Make sure you're plugging into the factory OBD plug and not some splitter or piggyback harness. Then you're gonna get your phone, you're gonna download the EZ-Link Auto Agent app. You're gonna go in your phone's Wi-Fi settings and connect to the EZ-Link Auto Agent. Then you'll open the app, and I'm just gonna screen record the process and voice over it. So make sure you're connected to the EZ-Link network. Then we're gonna open up the Auto Agent app. Make sure the key is turned to run or on, just don't start the truck. I'm gonna hit retry. There we go. And then this should pop up right here. Vehicle is set to link. You just want to hit link and you're just going to hit accept. Now you're going to go continue. For here, just put delete. Done. Now what we're going to go is we're going to hit this menu bar at the top left of the screen. Click on that. It's going to open up this menu and we're going to go to vehicle. You're going to go down to ECU profiles. You're going to pick one of these tunes for your truck. So we are going to select the high output because this is a high output. We are going to take note of the profile description, emission off, throttle valve must stay plugged in, and the EGR temperature sensor must be unplugged. But we're going to download this from the little cloud in the top right of the screen. And now we're going to hit install. Click proceed. Make sure your key is still on, obviously, or this won't work. And that's it. We are about to be tuning the truck. It's probably gonna, it's asking us to turn the key off, press continue, and then now you put the key back to run, press continue. And if you have a push button, all that means is you're just pressing it to turn it on or pressing it to shut it off. There's gonna be a bunch of warnings and stuff that might pop up on the dash, and then your dash will probably go black. That's totally normal. Just don't touch anything and let it do its thing. All right, it's been a few minutes. We're getting close to the end now. 99, come on, there you are. Almost done. Perfect. Now you're gonna, this is kind of weird because your truck is, you're gonna wait for a second. Now you can hear the trucks coming on, and then you want to hit off, and you're gonna hit continue. Now you're gonna put it back to run, hit continue, and now you are totally done. And a couple more features with this EZ-Link. If you go back, you can go hit the menu again, top left. So you can, if you hit DTC, it'll scan for codes. Sometimes when you tune these trucks, it'll throw a code. You just got to clear it after. See all these codes. We're just going to clear them. They shouldn't come back after we clear them. There's also a chat feature right there. If you see on the left, if you need to message the technician or something, you can chat there. And then if we go up here to dashboard, you'll see you can monitor gauges and all that kind of stuff. You can look at graphs. You can do that all on your phone. Just a quick warning though, do not change the tire size with the EZ-Link. It will throw a code. I don't know why, but it does. So just leave the tire size stock. So now you can remove the battery charger from your truck, and we're just gonna confirm that the tune was successful and we have no issues with it. And you can unplug this EZ-Link Auto Agent. You don't need to leave it plugged in after. You can just leave it in your garage or leave it in your truck if you ever need to clear codes, something like that. Now we're gonna unplug a few sensors underneath the hood, then go start the truck and make sure we don't have any codes. That's how we're gonna test the tune. So the first one is your EGR valve. There's this little red locking tab. Pop it back, then you can grab it and pop it off. The second is this little kind of vacuum pump thing, whatever. Unplug that guy. And then this third sensor is the most important one. It has to be unplugged if you're running this tuning. So this right here is your EGR temperature sensor, and that must be unplugged. It's a little bit tricky to get at, so what I do is I'm just gonna grab a 7mm nut driver and just loosen this off and loosen this guy, and I'm just gonna pop this black plastic air intake piping out, just like that. And then if you follow the wire from this temperature sensor, you'll see it actually comes over here to that connector right there. So again, I'm gonna use a pick to pop that red tab back. I'm gonna try to get my thumb in there. I can't really reach it. I'm just gonna pop it off of its little holder. Just gonna use an upholstery tool and pop it off. There we go. Now there's the connector. Now I can actually unplug it with 2 hands, just like that. Now I recommend you tape these up good and tight with some electrical tape. For older trucks, you can buy an actual plug kit that caps off all the open connectors. They just haven't released one for these trucks yet, so maybe by the time you watch this video, they might have a plug kit. If it's an option, I recommend adding it to the kit. And then you also need to zip tie it out of the way so it doesn't get caught in the fan. So as you can see down there, I zip tied it to the other wiring harness, taped it all up. This side of the sensor can just kind of hang out there for now because that's all gonna get removed when we do the EGR delete. Now put this piping back in place and we're gonna go try to start this truck. All right. Fires right up, that's great. Make sure we got throttle. Yeah. We got no codes. We should be good to go. So typically I always do the exhaust first and then the EGR because on these trucks, you have to delete the exhaust when you're running this tuning, but you could leave the EGR on the truck and just unplug it. But on these 23 and up Powerstrokes, they have a weird filter in the downpipe. So we have to actually remove the full downpipe and it's much easier to access that downpipe clamp once the EGR cooler's been removed. Some guys say you can access it kind of through the fender well. I'm assuming you'd have to pull the fender well out, but we're just gonna do the EGR delete first and we'll do the exhaust second. So the first thing we're gonna do is drain the coolant. Now these trucks actually have 2 coolant reservoirs, one on the driver's side and one on the passenger side. We're just doing the driver's side. So this is underneath the driver's side of the truck. And if you see straight up there, this is the drain right there. Now it's usually really hard to turn it with your hands. So I just use some pliers and I believe you only turn it a quarter turn and then you pull it out and pull it another quarter turn for like 180 degrees total. Make sure you have a really clean pail or something to catch the coolant in because we're gonna reuse it. So yeah, we're draining coolant right now. And like I said, it's just 180 degrees. You turn that plug out. If you want it to drain faster, go up to the driver's side coolant reservoir and just loosen the cap. So while the coolant's draining, we're gonna get started on this. First thing you wanna do is remove this hose clamp and that hose clamp. We're gonna be joining these hoses together and eliminating this section. Yeah, this is, I unclipped this hose from there and I took this hose off. So this is just gonna come out with the EGR cooler. And now we're just gonna connect those 2 together and just use the existing hose clamp. Just like that. We'll clip it back into place later. Now remove this air duct again. Now we're gonna remove this pipe and that pipe. So this one has 2 bolts there, 1 there, and then 2 down there. And this guy has just 2 here and 2 there. Here's the first one. And we're gonna be reusing the gasket on the bottom here. Just make sure you save this gasket for the blocker plate. And actually, just before you remove this pipe, you should remove this sensor just because it's mounted and nice and secure. So remove this sensor and then remove the pipe. Now I like to plug that bottom hole with a rag just because I don't want anything to fall in it. But now we're gonna remove this air filter housing. It's super easy. Just unplug this sensor, unclip it right here. This one has an aftermarket wire for something. I don't know, I'll get rid of that right now. And then you just pop it out of its holders. You just pop it out, there's no bolts. Okay, I lied. You gotta pop this little clip out first, remove this, and then down there, there's actually 1 bolt. Now with the air filter out of the way, we're gonna remove this bolt right here and that bolt that hold this plastic electrical harness on. And what I do is I take those 2 bolts, then I grab the blocker plate, make sure that O-ring is seated, and then I use them to secure the blocker plate. I think this kit might actually come with bolts, but I've just always done it this way. And if you for some reason have a kit that doesn't have an O-ring in that blocker plate, just use the factory gasket that was previously there. All right, that blocker plate is installed. Now you're gonna use some pliers and this hose clamp right here. We're going to loosen it and we wanna pop this hose off. This is the same hose that we previously reconnected over here, but we wanna pop it off and just fold it over to the side. Just be very careful because it slides onto a plastic nipple and you don't want to snap it. So don't be bending it back and forth. Now just give this hose a little push down to get it seated all the way at the bottom. And then you have to pinch both sides. As you see my fingers, you pinch those tabs and then you can pop this hose off. All right, this is loose now. So now all of this electrical, it's kind of clipped onto the EGR cooler. It's clipped right here. We need to just release it. So just pry and pop off the clips. And then there's also one back there. There's a plastic clip over top of a stud. We need to pop that off as well. And we just want all the electrical to be free. So I got this all kind of loose. There is also this vacuum line. I'm just gonna pop that vacuum line and just kind of get over to the side. And now we're ready to take the 7 bolts out of the EGR cooler. So you have 3 along the side here. The back one's kind of tricky. I usually use a long 1/4 inch extension and kind of go at it there with a swivel socket on the end. You have 1 right here in the middle. And then you have this one here, and there's 2 more along the side. This back one here where we just pulled the harness off of the little keeper off the stud, you got to pull the nut off first, and then you use a pry bar to flip this bracket that holds this sensor. You kind of just flip the bracket up and then the bolt is underneath there. Once those bolts are out, then you can just remove the EGR cooler. What is it, Vinny? He's scared. Big tough dog, scared of a fan. So the two at the back are the hardest. For this one over here, this is kind of the ratchet I used. I just stuck it back in there and I was able to get it free. For the back one on the right side, I used this ratchet with a flex head on it. That's how I got it off. But anyways, this should be all free and ready to come out. So we haven't disconnected the batteries, which is okay, but you want to be careful that you don't hit the EGR cooler on this alternator, because it will spark. So honestly, it's probably better to disconnect the negatives. I'm not going to, I'm just gonna remove it the way it is. So I like to get a pry bar in here and very gently, I'm just gonna twist it. There, you can see it's already free. If I grab this thing, oh, yeah, she's really free. So you're just gonna try to, you gotta kind of move it to the left so that the back bracket's past this intake manifold, and you just kind of wiggle it out of there gently. Let's see how big of a pain in the ass this one's gonna be. Oh. Actually, that wasn't bad at all. Now I just set it on a pail because there will still be some coolant inside of it. But from the top view, this is how it sits in the truck. So you can see there's 1, 2, 3 bolts there, one in the middle, and then there's 1, 2, 3 on that side. Now grab this blocker plate and 3 of these Allen key bolts. Make sure nothing looks out of the ordinary with these O-rings. They should be fine. And we can put this blocker plate on and then just snug it down. Just be careful. Tighten it down, but don't over tighten it. So now grab this other blocker plate that comes with the kit, and we need to plug this hole. So the sensor here that you remove from this pipe, you can just use this to plug that hole. And on the older Powerstrokes, you used to plug that sensor back in, but remember, we are leaving it unplugged on this one. So if you don't want to use the sensor, you don't have to. You can find a bolt and use a nice washer, something like that. You could also just weld this shut, but we need to block it off. The easiest thing is to just use this sensor. So I got my sensor installed. Grab your factory gasket, put it back on, put the blocker plate in, and then install it with the OEM bolts that you removed from here earlier. And now that blocker plate's installed. Now grab this rubber cap and one of these small zip ties, and you need to remove this rubber right angle fitting. I do it by just pulling and twisting it at the same time. Mine was not coming off, so I ended up cutting a slit in it, and then I was able to slide it off. Now slide this rubber cap over top, but don't slide it on too far, because if you push too hard, this plastic vacuum line will poke out and break the seal on here. So just slide over top, and then I'm just gonna put a zip tie on the middle, just like that. Now you can put your air intake back in, and basically all we have left is we just need to plug that back in and then put this coolant line back on that nipple and zip tie this out of the way. But I'm not gonna do that yet, because with this loose, it's actually easier, because the clamp we have to get at is back in here, right there, if you can see it. So that's the exhaust clamp we have to get to remove that downpipe. So it's easier if we just leave this loose, gives you a little bit extra room. So now we're gonna move on to the exhaust. Like I said, we're just gonna button up the last couple quick things once we have the exhaust changed. It's just a little easier that way. So I'm just lifting the truck up right now. If you don't have a lift, just drive it on some ramps. It's not that bad doing them off the ground. And if you haven't yet, you can go tighten up that coolant drain plug. I have my coolant right here, but I'm not gonna refill it till we're done the exhaust. So here's the exhaust. This is what we're gonna be removing. This is your DPF, your SCR, all that stuff. And this is the downpipe, so we have to remove that as well. If you just got the delete pipes or race pipes, you're gonna be replacing this piping all the way up to here, and they will bolt up to this 3-bolt flange. On this truck, we got the full 5-inch exhaust, so we're actually gonna be removing this and swapping out the tailpipe as well. So the first thing we wanna do is unplug all the sensors. Now on this back section, if you're doing the full 5-inch exhaust, or if you're doing a full 4-inch exhaust, there's one sensor right there that runs all the way along here, and it goes right up there, if you can see that, up kind of between the frame and the spare tire. So you actually have to drop the spare tire to unplug that connector. If you just got the race pipes, then you can just leave that connector plugged in. It won't matter. So I actually got to lower this lift so I can drop that spare tire. So again, if you're just doing the race pipes, you don't have to do this. If you're doing a full exhaust, then you have to do this. If you're removing the spare tire, you have to pull this key out and take this out, drop the spare tire. So with the spare tire out of the way, this is what we need to unplug. Basically, you just have to kind of pry and pop this plastic cover off. It's not really any good way to do it, honestly. Usually they flip and break like that. pop this white tab back like that. Then you can unplug it and then use your pry tool to pry this thing off, take all the clips off, and just let this whole entire module hang. And then tape up that sensor, and you can put the spare tire back up and put all that stuff away. So as you can see, we got this just hanging. So now regardless of if you're doing delete pipes with a full exhaust, we gotta go along and unplug this sensor. I'm just gonna unscrew this sensor out of the exhaust. There's another sensor here that actually goes over to the outside frame rail. There's a ton of sensors. There's a couple of smaller sensors up here, another sensor up here. Basically, you just go along and try to unplug all the sensors you can. If you can't access a sensor, you can wait until you have the exhaust loose. And if you have a friend, you can kind of lower it down, get your friend to hold it, and you can unplug them then. And then on this downpipe, you see these coolant lines. They run across the cross member here. You can leave them hooked up, but we're gonna have to undo these clips. And over here, we're gonna take one of these coolant lines off and we're just gonna loop these coolant lines. And these metal lines will come off with the downpipe. And don't forget, up here at the back, you gotta pop this little module out and then unplug it. Just get everything unplugged. This knock sensor here on the outside frame rail is kind of annoying because it has one of those push clips right up on the top of the frame rail. So I try to use this, I bent it at a right angle and then I kind of get it underneath that push clip and then I just hit it with a hammer to pop it out. See there, mine just kind of broke off the little Christmas tree. Super gay. Up at the front on the frame rail, there's a couple more. Unplug this guy. Then there's this guy that's got two wires coming out of it. And we just got to feed these over to the other side of the frame rail with the exhaust. All right, there's one. This one with the two wires was kind of a pain in the ass to slide over top of the frame over to this side, but I got it. And the def line is way up there. I don't really know how to take it off yet. I'm probably gonna wait till the downpipe is kind of hanging down a little bit further so I can see on top of it to see how it disconnects. But other than that, I think I got pretty much all of them. We got this guy, this one at the back that has two wires. Moving up, we have another Knox module here. I undid this. I unplugged this sensor up there. Kind of pop that out of the holder. Moving forward, we got these two guys, and then there's this other one here with the two wires. I don't know, man. I think that's pretty much it. I guess I'll know more when I start removing the exhaust if I forgot a sensor or not. That's why it definitely helps to have a buddy. If somebody can hold it for you while you lower it, then you can make sure everything's disconnected. So if you just have the delete pipes, you can probably just take these three nuts off here and just kind of push this exhaust back and then work at getting this out. But I'm pulling the full exhaust out, so I'm gonna start by taking these three nuts off the back of here and pulling the tail section out. It's a good idea to spray those hangers with a lubricant just so that the exhaust slides out easier. But to get these hangers off, I like to use a pry bar, and you can just kind of pry them off like that. Or these are exhaust hanger pliers. They work really good to pop the rubber hangers off. All right, we got those two sections out. Now time for this big girl. So what I do first is I actually spray these hangers with some lube, and then I'm just gonna wrestle these two rubber hangers right off and take them out of the truck. And actually all you really need to do is just kind of take them off of those two hangers right there. So now this is a little bit loose. Then going up here, there's this hanger right here. And I just like to take those two nuts right off. I think they're 13 millimeters. There we go. Now this rubber hanger will just come off with the exhaust. Now I sprayed these with some lube as well, but we need to go to the other side and take these three bolts out that hold these two pieces together. All right, those three bolts are out, and as you can see, this thing is just kind of hanging. It's pretty loose. It's only held in by those two hangers up there. So I'm gonna spray those down with some lube. I'm gonna use a pry bar to pry them off, and I'm just gonna have a friend come help me hold this exhaust while I remove it. If you're doing this job on the ground, it's actually much easier to take this out because you can just use your knees to hold the weight of the exhaust. But if it's up on a lift, it's kind of better to have two guys. I got this end. If you wanna grab that end, we can probably just like push it out now. So now we just have this downpipe to remove. So if you wanted to, you could probably just cut it with a Sawzall, but we're not gonna wreck this one. We're gonna take this transmission cross member out. So undo this electrical harness, just pop it out of its clips, go around to the other side. These coolant lines, you have to have them popped out and loose as well. And you see what I did here is I actually just used one of the coolant lines and I looped it right there. So here's the other one. This is all gonna come out with the downpipe, and right there I looped it. So once you have that done, we're gonna take out these two bolts here, and then there's two on the outside right there. Remove this transfer case guard. Then once you got that guard out of the way, there's two 21 millimeter nuts right there. We're gonna remove those. So now I have a stand here on the transfer case, and as you can see, I've actually lifted it a little bit off this transmission cross member. So I'm going to take the 2 bolts out here and 2 on that side, and I'm going to drop the transmission cross member out of the truck. And there we go, the transmission cross member is out. Remember to unclip these 2 things off of the top of the transmission cross member. And then I undid the final clip that looks like this. It's kind of up on the frame rail there. So now these hoses are just hanging out. The only thing left that I haven't disconnected is the def line, which maybe I can get at now. Okay, I just undid the def line and actually see that white mark on mine. All you do is you push it down with your thumb and then you can slide it off. So I think everything is disconnected from this downpipe now. So I didn't really think about this, but now I actually have to climb up onto the top, up on the truck there, and then loosen off the downpipe clamp. Okay, so I'm up here. I just loosened the clamp. I'm gonna try to show it to you. So there's the clamp right there. As you can see, I loosened it. It's a 15mm nut to loosen it. And then I had to tap it a little bit just to kind of break the clamp free. So now here's the new downpipe, and you see this bracket? We have to take those nuts out of the bracket on the truck. So if you see up here, just kind of straight up from the oil filter, there's those 2 nuts right there. We gotta remove those. So once you get the nuts out from up there, you gotta go over here. And the last thing, it's pretty gay. See this thing right up there, right along the frame rail? There's an exhaust hanger in there. And you can't slide this out of the hanger because it hits the transmission. So like I said, this is pretty gay, but there's 2 bolts, one right there and one right there. You have to remove those. And then the hanger will just come out with the downpipe. So now the downpipe should be hanging down like this. It's super loose, and I think basically we just have to try to fight with it and slide it this way off those studs and off that existing downpipe up there. Oh, what a bitch, man. Doesn't even look like it's fucking moving. Okay, we got her out. It was kind of a pain in the ass. So what I did is those 2 nuts you took off of here, off that bracket, I actually got a torque socket like this, and I pulled the studs right out of the cylinder head. That allowed me to wiggle it more like you saw in that video. Then I went back up to the top, I grabbed a pry bar and basically crawled into the freaking engine where the EGR used to be. And I hit the clamp with a pry bar to just spread it open more. I spread it open as wide as I could. Then I came back down under here and I used a big pry bar to kind of just apply pressure, outwards pressure to the downpipe while I wiggled it up and down, and then eventually it came free. I probably said every swear word in the dictionary, so try to keep your cool a little bit more than I did, and you'll be fine. So now I'm gonna tape up all the open connectors and zip tie them all out of the way before I install the new exhaust. So I got everything nice and taped up. Don't forget about the ones over here on the outside of the frame rail. Now we can put the cross member back in now. I wanna get this stupid post out of the way, so I'm gonna put the transmission cross member back in. So remember, 4 bolts, 2 nuts on the transmission bracket, and then the 4 bolts that hold that little skid plate on. All right, we got the cross member back in. Now we gotta take the elbow off the turbo. This is the new one. It goes with the new downpipe. So the clamp for the turbo elbow is actually, it doesn't look too bad. It's kind of right in here, but this exhaust back pressure sensor, if we remove that, it would give us so much more room. So I already loosened mine. And there, if I just pop that out, we'll reinstall this after. But now can you see? That's the V-band clamp for the turbo elbow right there. So loosen that V-band clamp. Sometimes even when you loosen them, the V-band clamps still kind of stick onto the joint. So you have to use a little pry bar or screwdriver or tap it with a hammer just to kind of break it free. We'll pull out that turbo elbow, we'll have a look at them, and then we'll install the new one. So take this bolt completely out of the V-band clamp on the turbo elbow, and you can kind of get a pry bar back in there and pry the clamp off a bit. So now I'm under the truck again, and there's actually a bracket on the bottom side of that turbo elbow, but it's super easy to access from underneath the truck. I'll take the turbo elbow out and then show you what it looks like. So then I went up there again and kind of pried that V-band clamp off. But now downpipe should come out, or the elbow. There it is. This is that bolt I was talking about. That's how it sits in the truck. It's really easy to get that bolt out. It was a bit of a pain in the ass to get that turbo elbow out though. So if you're struggling a little bit, that's normal. Just have patience and take your time, you'll get it out. So grab your new turbo elbow. If you want, you can start the V-band clamp on it right now. My V-band clamp's still stuck to the back of the turbo. I also think there is a gasket back there. Try to reuse it if you can, but honestly, if you didn't have the gasket in there, I don't think that's the end of the world. And you can feed this back along the firewall and put it in. And then just get the V-band clamp on, get the bolt started in it, but don't tighten it yet because we're gonna have to pivot this a little bit while we get the new downpipe in. Once the downpipe's connected to this and that's all good, then we can tighten this. So I did end up taking the V-band clamp right off. The factory gasket's still back there. If you can see it there, it kind of clips onto the turbo. So I got my V-band clamp on the elbow and I'm gonna put her in. All right, I got the new turbo elbow in. I did snug the clamp up a little bit just so that it wouldn't fall out because I kind of stretched that V-band clamp open a little bit so it was easier easier to reinstall. It was actually super easy to reinstall. And then I snug the clamp up a bit so it wouldn't fall out, but I can still pivot it up and down. Once we have the downpipe connected to the turbo elbow, then we'll tighten the V-band clamp on the turbo. And if you're wondering how I did it, I was able to actually squeeze my right arm over back behind the intake manifold here and just hold that turbo elbow up to the turbo. And then I used my left hand over here to get the V-band clamp on, put the bolt in. It was tricky, took a little bit of finesse, but it wasn't so bad. So now if you took these two studs out, we're gonna put them back in the cylinder head because we need them for this new downpipe. So I got those studs back in, turbo elbow is right there. Now I'm gonna put this downpipe in. Make sure you put this clamp on first, because once it's on the turbo elbow, you're not getting that clamp on. Then try to just slide it over the turbo elbow and line it up with those studs there. All right, so the downpipe's in, it slid over top of the elbow there. That went really good. And as you can see, I have it loose here, but I put the nuts on the studs. When you're tightening those studs, make sure that you have this kind of right nice in the middle. Because if you leave it this way and you tighten the studs, it's gonna be way over this way. You wanna kind of hold it up there, and while you're holding it, tighten those studs. It should look something kind of like that. Got those nuts tight, she's nice and solid. Okay, back at the top, now I'm gonna tighten those two clamps. So I'm gonna tighten the clamp that goes from the downpipe to the turbo elbow, and then tighten the V-band clamp on the turbo elbow. I'm gonna plug this sensor back in. I unplugged this just for some more room. And I'm also gonna reinstall this exhaust back pressure sensor. So everything should be nice and tight under the hood. So here is the new exhaust. I got her all laid out. This front piece, make sure you slide this thing onto it. Then you got your second piece, your third piece. See this piece, it's beveled on both sides. If you have a muffler, that's where the muffler would go. This goes over the axle and that's your tailpipe. There's also, this is an extra piece if you have a long box. And we do have a long box, so we'll probably need to use that. So grab this first piece. There should also be some bolts in the box. So you can put this first piece in. As you can see, I have it started here and the bolts are on, they're just not tight. I still want to be able to move it, and you just kind of want to line it up so that it goes straight to the back. Then grab your second piece, slide it onto the first piece and put it in the hanger. Then add on more straight pipe sections until you're all the way to these back hangers up there. And again, if you just got the delete pipes, then you're gonna have a 3-bolt flange and you're just gonna bolt it up to the factory 3-bolt flange at the tailpipe. Now, if you're doing the full exhaust like me, this is the piece that goes over your axle. And I took the rubber hangers off of the truck and I put them on the exhaust. And you can slide it in there and put the hangers up. Now, this is a problem with pretty much every 5-inch exhaust. If a truck has a fifth wheel up here, the plate, the 5-inch exhaust likes to hit on it. So I usually stick a marker up there and kind of mark where it's hitting, and I take it out, and then honestly, you just have to dent it in with a hammer. Just the way she goes. I know she doesn't look pretty, but that's literally what you have to do. It's just a tax on being cool. And then once that's in place, you can put the last piece in, the tailpipe. So I'm having a hard time getting this tailpipe into the hanger. So what I'm gonna do to make it easier, there's just two 10 mil bolts right there and two on the other side. I'm just gonna pull this hanger off, put it on here, and then I'll just lift it up and bolt it back up. All right, tailpipe is in. Now gather all your clamps like this, and I take them apart and then build them around the joints. Just pay attention to how this thing is positioned. You want that skinny side to go that way against the exhaust pipe. Then we're just gonna start at the front and tighten everything all the way down to the back. And there she is. Nice and solid, no rattles. We go all the way up to the front. Make sure you tighten this up and then just tighten all the clamps all the way down. Make sure it's not hitting anything, no airbag lines or anything like that. And we can go back up to the engine to do the finishing touches on an EGR Delete, throw coolant in, and then we can fire this girl up. All right, so last couple things we have to do in the engine bay. There's this hose. You gotta clip it back into its place there. This hose, we reconnected at the very beginning. You gotta make sure that's back on. I taped up these sensors, including this one that goes in the blocker plate. Now I'm just gonna zip tie them out of the way. All right, so zip tied this. I kinked this vacuum line that we capped off. I zip tied that out of the way. These are zip tied. Make sure this sensor is plugged back in if you haven't done that already on your air filter. I'm gonna do something with this. I'm just gonna clip it in right there. There, that's perfect. And if you have some stuff left over, that's totally normal. That's what I have left over. Okay, well, I think that is it. Make sure your coolant drain plug is tight and we can put the coolant back in. All right, we got coolant in it. Once you drive the truck and it warms up and that thermostat opens up, likely the coolant level will drop and you have to top it up. That's totally normal. But now the moment of truth, fire her up. Oh, that sounds so good. So you're gonna wanna go underneath the truck, check all the exhaust clamps for leaks, check for leaks around the turbo and the downpipe, check for coolant leaks underneath the truck, but there she is. She's running mint. Again, this kit is linked in the description. If the link looks a little bit funny, it's because it's an affiliate link. So if you click the link and buy something, that's literally how I make my money and how I live. If you enjoyed the video and it helped you out and you want to show a little more support, you can go to darkirondiesel.com and grab yourself some super sweet merch. And I will be posting a review video where we're running on the dyno, checking fuel mileage, stuff like that. So subscribe if you want to see that video. And when it's released, I will put it in the description as well. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video and I hope to see you on another one soon.
I can't take no loss. I don't even know what it costs.